Greetings, folks. Welcome to another one of our free Friday community classes right here on the YouTubes. I post these every single Friday, so if you're interested in this kind of very nerdy content, please hit the subscribe button. Let me know you're out there, and I'll give you a little ding every time a new bit of content goes up. So this week, I want to talk a bit about how I herbalism. We're going to talk about elemental herbalism and get into sort of not just the basics of how I approach working with plant medicine, but also the language of nature and why this particular style of herbalism works so well for me. In case I forget to mention at the end of this video, I'm also releasing an 8-part course in elemental herbalism for free for you right now. There's a link down below for you to enjoy that. There's guided meditations in there and herbs and all kinds of good stuff. So enjoy. So with that, elemental herbalism is sort of the way that I've come to describe my style of clinical and spiritual herbalism over the years. I am a traditionally trained clinical herbalist. I went to school. I'm in full-time clinical practice here in Salt Lake City where I live. But I definitely practice a more spiritual style of herbalism because I weave together the folkloric magical aspects of working with plants and the empirical and ancestral wisdom about plant medicine together, right? So that's very cool. And I work with the language symbol of the 4 elements as a way to explore the constitution or the temperament of my clients, to explore the state of their dis-ease or disharmony, and then to help me refine the types of herbs that I should be working with for that claim. So let's unpack that a little bit. Now, first, every ancient, ancestral, indigenous form of plant medicine, whether it's from the British Isles or North Africa or the Americas or anywhere else, has some form of an energetic language that's used to describe person, disease state, and pathway to healing, right? That's just something we see everywhere. It's core plant medicine practice. In China, we have the ancient and contemporary expressions of traditional and contemporary Chinese herbalism, where the language of yin and yang, the language of the 5 elements, the language of the 6 pernicious evils are used to describe those situations. We have the Southeast Asian tradition of Ayurveda, which uses the Tridoshic model of Vata, Kapha, Pitta to explore energetic states of person, of disharmony, and of process to healing. So this is not unique to the Greek humoral tradition or Western vitalism or even to Chinese herbalism or Ayurveda, right? A lot of the reason why people fall in love with these sort of pan-Asian traditions of plant medicine is because they have a working model of energetics in place. And then suddenly we get this language. We get this language model that allows us to unpack how herbal medicine works. And we're like, oh my God, this finally makes sense. But there's a Western one too. It's always been there. It's a little bit covert in some ways, but when we sort of open our eyes to it, we understand. So I work with the 4 primordial elements as a language symbol. Now, this is interesting because, as I mentioned, Chinese herbalism has 5 elements. Ayurveda has 3 doshas, which are 3 different combinations of the 4 elements. So again, it's pretty universal, right? Which is very cool. One of my teachers called this fact that we see these consistencies through cultures planetary herbalism, right? That it's sort of a planet-wide phenomenon of language. And it's because we're tapping into the language of nature, right? That's what's happening. So I work with the 4 primordial elements in my herbalism: earth, air, fire, and water, in that order. And these elements help me to explore somebody's constitution, somebody's state. So in order for me to understand how somebody has stepped out of their version of center, their version of harmony, I have to understand what their version of center normally looks like, right? In order to explore a disease state or a disharmony, we have to know what it's going to look like when we get you back into a state of harmony, back into a state of wellness. So we have this concept of a temperament, which we see a lot in the Greek and sort of Southern European humoral traditions, the temperament or the constitution. In Ayurveda, you're a particular dosha or a combination of doshas. In Chinese herbalism, you are ruled by one of the 5 fundamental elements. You're susceptible to influence by one of the 6 pernicious evils. And in elemental herbalism, everybody has a dominant element. Now, no one is a perfect balance of all 4. That's not health. That's a very finicky balance that's very easily destroyed. Everybody has all 4 in different combinations. That's what makes each of us special. But you will always have a dominant element. And it may be that that element is dominant in your physical body, and then in your emotional and mental bodies, you have a different element that's kind of got some influence. Totally normal. But most people, when you say, which of the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, do you identify with? And they'll say, oh, I'm a very airy person. I identify with airiness. What's cool about that is I didn't have to unpack any of that for you or for a client that I work with. I don't have to say, okay, earth means this and fire means this. We already know. It's already a language symbol that is inherent to us because it's inherent in nature and we're part of nature. So when somebody talks about a person having a really fiery temperament, intuitively you already know so much about that person, right? If somebody says, oh, he's got a very airy temperament. Me, perfect, pretty classic example of an airy temperament. You already know. If that person has very watery emotions, you know. If that person is built in got a really earthy body, you already know, right? How cool is that? So we use these language symbols as a way to explore what somebody's normal is. Now, I have to do a little caveat here, and when I teach this style of herbalism to students, we spend hours on this, but I just want to do a little asterisk disclaimer. Your version of center, your version of normal, your version of in harmony is yours and yours alone. There is no standard, there's no litmus, and there's no ideal, right? So again, I see a lot of Western people who start, become Ayurvedic practitioners, get this weird, distorted concept that the point of Ayurveda is for somebody to be a perfect, exact balance of all 3 doshas all the time. No, that's never how that's going to work. Nature, even a river is not a perfect expression of water. There are days when the river is running very cold, which brings in earth energy, or really running really warm, which brings in fire energy. There are dissolved minerals and metals in water, which is earth energy. Water makes a sound, a bubbling, gurgling sound, which is an air energy. So even water isn't purely water. How is any human ever going to be a perfect balance of 3 energies, 3, 5, 4, it doesn't matter, right? So when we have these conversations, it's very important to remember there is no ideal. There's no, if I was just a perfect balance of earth, air, fire, and water, all my problems would be solved. I'd be healthy enough, strong enough, smart enough, pretty enough. No, your perfect little recipe of 70% this, 15% this, 9% this, that's yours. And that's you, right? So the goal of spiritual herbalism is not to push any of us into some conceptualized box of perfection, some ideal that doesn't exist, but rather to help us identify, explore, and relate to our version of center, our version of wellness, and then to maintain a relationship with that space. Period. Don't let anybody tell you different. And if you hear other people say different than that, here's one rare example where I may have never said this in a class before. They're wrong. It's wrong. That's not how nature works. That's not how humans work. That's not how things go. So they can think that all they want. You will just bang your head into a brick wall all the day trying to get there, and you won't. So we use these elements to understand, oh, this person naturally is a very fiery kind of person. They've got a fiery body, lean, effortless lean muscle, high metabolism, really good fiery digestion. The skin's warm. They have a nice flush in their face. The eyes are bright. Lips are pink. They speak loudly. They're very passionate. All of these things that we attribute with a fiery constitution. And then they step into a disease state, and suddenly their hands and their feet are always cold, and they have this annoying clear mucus drip out of their nose, and their eyes are watery, and their digestion is super wonky, and they eat food, and food just sits in their belly forever because it's cold in there instead of warm and fiery. And we say, oh, this fiery person has stepped into an excessive cold state or a deficient heat state, allowing the cold to overtake. Elements are fine and beautiful and dandy until they become dominant or domineering, meaning that instead of being in harmony with the other three elements, they're dominating over the other three elements, causing a disharmony, right? So now we understand how this person likes to be, what their version of center is, where they are now, what the disease state is, and it tells us some things about the kind of medicine that we need. So maybe the answer is herbal medicine. And we say, okay, this person normally runs really hot. Right now they're running really cold. Somehow they've stepped out of their heat. They've stepped out of their innate fire. Maybe they came up with this really exciting startup idea, and they were trying to get funding, and they were pumped about it, and they were burning the midnight oil, and their head was on fire, and they were doing all these things, and it didn't work out, and it kind of doused their fire. You see the language that we use too? Those of us speaking English are speaking an Indo-European language, which already includes a connection to the four elements, right? So we already use things like, I'm drowning in debt. I feel airheaded. My brain is cloudy or foggy. He's hot-headed or hot-tempered, right? He's a stick in the mud. We already use terms that tell us exactly which elemental influence is there. So this hot person has now become excessively cold, or they've stepped out of their natural heat, which has allowed cold to invade and become dominant or problematic. And it tells us what we have to do. We have to warm them back up. We've got to get their fire stoked again. We've got to get them back into their fire. So we could do that by doing fire rituals, meditations around fire, getting the person back into physical movement to get their internal heat up, or working with herbs that circulate the light, help shake off loss, help us move out of a failure and into the next phase, that warm the core of the body, that circulate the blood, that open up, vasodilate, open up the vessels, getting the person's warmth back into their body. This is why spiritual herbalism, energetic herbalism, whatever you want to call it, works, right? Because it's not, oh, this person is having a sluggish digestive system. Well, I heard peppermint and ginger and chamomile are good for digestion. Let's give it to them. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't tell us anything. And it certainly doesn't address the core issue with this person, which is that they've stepped out of their fire. So ginger, in that case, would actually be one good herb for them. But we want to consider not just what the herbs are good for. That's step one, not very helpful. 50-50 chance that the herbalism is going to be effective acutely, 10% chance it's going to address the chronic underlying pattern, the root issue. We want to step from that into what's the personality of the person, what's the personality of the disharmony, and what's the personality or spirit of the plant or plants that we are thinking of introducing into that person's universe, right? If this normally fiery person is suddenly running very cold, and we say, oh, I heard lemon balm is really good for digestion, or I flipped my book open and my book says herbs for digestion, lemon balm. I've got lemon balm. I'm going to give this person lemon balm. Yes, lemon balm is carminative. Yes, lemon balm can support digestion. There's an affinity there. But lemon balm is cool and a little damp. So we're going to throw an herb that has an affinity for the digestion, one of the places where this person is experiencing some trouble, but has the aggravated element as its own element. So we're driving coldness into the belly in a person who's experiencing coldness in their belly. You might make it worse. So much of my job is working with people who have already seen herbalists or already picked up a book or got a remedy from a health food store and said, it made me worse. It made me feel worse. Like all of this stuff is garbage. It doesn't work. And I have to like back them out of that and start all over again. So I went a little further on that than I was going to, but again, there's that course down below and we'll go in. So here's the real takeaway. And I'm going to do another class on this in a few weeks, that these languages that we use to explore herbs, hot, cold, wet, dry, earth, air, fire, water, descending, diffusing, condensing, downward, diaphoretic, diuretic, nervine, sedative, stimulant, they are not words that are specific to plant medicine. They're not words that are exclusive to herbalism. They are words that poetically infer massive processes within nature, right? Diaphoresis is a process that happens within nature. Stimulation, sedation, condensing, diffusing, things rising upward like fire, things moving downward like water. These are things that happen in nature. And these are words that our great green ancestors have evolved over bajillions of years, from the plants to the humans, to explore shorthand some of the things that happen in nature, so that then we can use these terms to explore what's going on and then figure out what the hell we're going to do about it. And again, the beauty is they're so ingrained in our intuition because we are part of nature. We are just as much nature as bear, mountain, river, snowstorm, all of it, right? And because of that, we're plugged into that same mythopoetic language that nature uses. So when I talk about somebody having a lot of excess fire in their digestive system, you could sit and meditate on that for a moment and unpack it. You could say, you know what? I understand that. I've had hot, upward moving energy in my digestive system, and I had heartburn, or I had acid reflux, or my stomach had sharp, fiery pains in it from something I ate. We can talk about somebody going through a loss or a breakup or a trauma in their life and stepping into an emotionally and mentally cold place, right? We've all been there, wanting to curl up and hide under blankets, to hibernate, right? To go into the cold earth, shutting down, freezing up, disconnecting, isolating, all these things that coldness infers. With a few minutes of meditation, you understand the fullness of what I mean when I say that somebody's in a really cold place in their life. We say this person is, treating me really coldly. We already used the language. It's very cool. So I wanted to bring this to the table because I want to spend some time over the coming year doing a little bit more classes, these Friday classes on this topic. And this will be sort of a reference point of where to start. And I wanted to, remind people that this 8-part immersive course on elemental herbalism is now out there for free. So if you are interested, the link's down there. Go explore. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know how energetics play a role in the way that you interface with nature, with spirituality, with herbal medicine, with whatever it is that you do, because wherever you look, you will find these energetic languages showing up and making themselves visible. So with that, I will send you out into the world to explore and play with the language of energetics. With blessings of peace and plenty. I'll see you next time.